Okay, so I'm here with,
Linda.
And KG.
and we are going to be discussing our projects a little bit in more detail and getting some feedback. So,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
so let's start with Linda, actually. So,
Okay.
for context, we've already discussed the project in a bit more detail, and now we're just going to, KG and I will give you a bit more feedback. What we thought was good and what any areas of improvement. I'll go first. So I think I was really impressed with the actual idea. The concept is really intricate, and it's a very it's very high level idea, very innovative. Like the frame for sense making via ChatGPT. I think that's really good. Your attention to cultural aesthetics is a really powerful thing as well. Like I can see that, the potential of, ChatGPT actually creating something like a religion or being a central space for like all knowledge or a being. Well, it's not going to be a being, but what defines a being,
Exactly.
So that's the thing. So I think that's a really good thing. And
like in a way, it represents all of us.
Yeah.
well, it does. It's probably got data from all of us, quite
Yeah.
literally. So, I think it's really interesting how you can do that and try and get AI to kind of synthesize bits of data from multiple different sources of, the training data that it's had. I think that's a strong point. I won't lie, it is hard to give you any feedback, which is a cop out, but it genuinely, like the level of what you're focusing on for this DA compared to other peers potentially, not in this group, sorry Haji, I don't mean it like that, but
It's okay.
but like overall I think it's quite a meaningful and deep investigation.
Some people will say that it has no real world relevance.
Well, they're a bit silly because it's literally
Good and bad thing.
yeah,
Good and bad thing.
it's the real world that we're living in, and it's just going to keep getting more and more like that. So, any words of wisdom? Any feedback?
I think it's like, it's feedback, I guess. But the only thing I can say is that it's really good and really interesting, the direction you're taking in terms of like the focus on decentralization, because your initial focus was like, yes, I'm going to create this character and then use ChatGPT, but rather than that, you're using like you said prior, it's like ChatGPT is like the elder or something, and I'm just trying to gain wisdom from it in order to understand the things used to understand things. And I think like that's a really good direction to at least like keep it open, and James said before was like anti-fragility, because it's just like it can keep going. Other people can join in on it as well.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Thank you.
And you're building that. Every time you add data, add images, you're actually building your own narratives in the data set itself, which is very intricate.
And it just joins back into the feedback.
And that
loop.
leads into your DA,
yes.
James.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, you are pretty much like finding narratives from the collected data,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I find that really interesting as well, because I do wonder what story can ChatGPT get from just like glimpses and things that you've provided it.
Yeah.
And like the fact that it can get so closely to what your real life is, it is quite powerful.
Yeah. Scary.
It can be scary, but like
If you use it well.
Yeah. Great power.
Great powers.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and like I just love your idea, like
Thank you.
seeing what it can tell you about you, because the bigger scale of that is then what it can predict
Yes.
in the future
Yeah.
about about you and your
Yeah.
life, the patterns that you have. It can show so much insight on you and how you live your life, the practices,
Yeah.
and that can tell a lot about potential and future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually am really kind of keen to hopefully keep it ongoing, even after the DA. If I can work out a way to make it a bit more easier for me to do, to collect all that data, because obviously bigger data sets better,
Yeah.
and the more and more like, that it will collect, the more accurate predictions it could possibly make. And I'd like to see things like in regards to even like the way that it could potentially predict mood and stuff like that based on like, you know, certain factors like the weather, which I'm collecting at the moment, temperature, activity, because obviously, you know, fitness and that is a boost of your mood sometimes. So, and even calendars, like hopefully look at linking my calendar in, which could obviously predict stress and stuff like that, which is interesting. So, yeah. Anything you've both been very lovely about it, but is there anything that you would like to see from this project that isn't currently like there?
I think again, as mentioned previously, but finding a utility specifically for how you're going to use all of this, because I think you mentioned before, it's just kind of like you'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But I think not that it's a goal, but trying to find a way that it's like useful to either yourself or to like hopefully a broader like group of people, just be like, why initially are you doing this in the first place? I think that'd be a good direction for you.
Yeah.
And then also looking into again, like I mentioned, like old media and seeing their portrayal on like how centralization and synthesization of data like before to now, especially with like, oh, people don't want to collect all their data in the one place because it's going to go to the big scary place or something. I think that's also a good way to innovate further on like what data especially was seen as feared to be collected.
True, yeah.
And then you can also add that into your own data set and see how that affects like, you know, your mood or whatever, your information you're trying to collect.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see how much more accurate we can get it based on those things. Because there's things that I'm not including in it at the moment on purpose because I don't want it to know that even. So
everything.
I don't want that in the narrative. So, but yeah, I think I need to be more transparent and just see how far I can push it.
So you're saying you're currently creating your data a little bit.
Yes.
I mean, you kind of
have a certain story.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily to say a certain or like create a certain story, but I'm not providing that. Like, there's certain sources that I'm not providing. Like, I'm not going through and going, oh, I spent $200 at McDonald's last week. I'm not going to include that in. But I mean, like there's certain data sources that I'm not including on purpose for like privacy reasons, I would say.
I think like similar to my project, I think a powerful part of your assignment is why does ChatGPT think what is it knowing about you just because you spent $200 at McDonald's?
Well, that's true, yeah.
Like, or that you took 10K steps this morning.
Yeah.
Like, how does it come to those conclusions about you?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it that is going to be interesting for you to discover in the future. And it all comes down to like sense making, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you really need to work towards a goal or achieve something from this. It's just to understand what ChatGPT is doing with your data, or like what the data out there is doing to you.
Yes, that's true. And just the whole what pictures can it paint really? Because obviously, like we discussed, on its own, nothing really. You know, like you can say, oh yeah, he walked 10,000 steps, but as soon as you combine that with GPS, you know where that 10,000 steps was taken. Financial, you know that maybe I bought a coffee when I was on the walk, and then there's all sorts of stuff like that which can be, you know, bundled into like marketing packages, which could be literally used to tailor ads and everything specifically to me, which I hope to understand through this. So I think excited. So okay, well, we'll go on to KG's. I'll go first. I think it's really impressive. I've seen like because I was in your class last semester where I saw the creation of this game. And I think the way that you've kind of transcended above the original goal, which was to build the game for that class, and now you're basically seeing how far you can push a game and its like constraints and boundaries to see where it kind of starts to all fall apart and not be a board game necessarily, and morph into something a bit more.
I love how you said fall apart, because it's like instead of KG trying to build a board game, now she's like breaking it apart to like kind of really understand.
Literally brute forcing it to the boundaries of what a board game is to see how far it can go, which I think that's essentially what you're trying to do. You're going to push it so far that you'll know when it's not going to work anymore, because it will quite literally will fall apart.
Yeah.
The narrative will fall apart. The mechanics won't work anymore and stuff like that, where people can't actually play. The game will break.
Yeah.
Which I think is really exciting. It's interesting. I think, like, to see, and yeah, hopefully, it. There's a lot of stuff that you can learn out of it, and I think it's a good way to define, if you're into building board games and stuff like that as something future, as a hobby or even as a career. It helps you to learn, the constraints that you can work with, and even beyond that, so that then you can even try and start doing innovative ideas like that, where it does morph board games into, like, whatever's above that, be it, a digital version of a game and stuff like that, and you'll learn how to actually morph them together, combine them together.
And I like how you're experimenting with different materials, because, like, I really do believe, like, the message is the medium, and there's something about different kind of materials and how you interact with them that can change change the board game completely. And, like, we see that reflected in digital versions of board games, and it's not the same. And, like, I feel like there's something that they're trying to bring back with, like, VR games, where they're trying to put back a more tangible aspect to a game.
Yeah.
But that's, like, also a different level.
Yeah.
And I just, your question about what even is a board game, I just love that. I sit with that, and the fact that I can't come to a conclusion, that's, like, the best part of it. That is so open-ended, and I can just keep thinking about this.
That's cool.
Yeah. I'm just going to say, I would, just as a little, like, to see how far this project can go, it would be interesting to see a bit more, like, even if, like, and I'm not even sure how you'd be able to document this, but, like, a way to actually show the implications of what your project is doing. Like, what will it prove, and what can it show by actually breaching those boundaries?
Yeah.
Like, because it's something that, and I'm no expert, but it's something that I doubt many people have spent an actual project on with that goal of trying to find those boundaries. So what are the implications of finding those boundaries, and what could that do to the game industry, literally? Like, like, how could it? Yeah, I think you know what I mean. But,
yeah,
like,
I'm on board with you.
Yeah, how could it? Yeah, like, if people were game designers and that were to see this information, what could it do to the whole industry of building games?
Yeah, because, like, if you know the limits, or if you know how it doesn't work, then you can make it work.
Well, that's it, yeah. And because people are working on a blueprint at the moment, this is what a successful game looks like. This is what, a board game looks like. So we follow that, and these are the constraints. And, you can be creative and change designs.
And we tend to look at things that have success, that are successful, but then we kind of forget that there's so much to learn from those that did not succeed.
Yeah. And that's why you're in a really good position, because it doesn't really matter whether the game actually succeeds or not. You get the power of actually doing whatever you want and being absolutely erratic and crazy and destroying the game, literally, and it being totally fine. Like, you haven't invested billions of dollars into a successful game and a marketing campaign and everything. True. So, I'm excited to see how it pans out.
I love how
the goal.
Yeah, exactly. And the yokai isn't the goal. It's like, everything around it. And, like, I love how all our DAs have such a narrative that can be told, right? And I think that's our shared common thing here.
Yes, definitely. I agree.
But then, because it's so deeply entwined with that, we all had issues with having it too big.
Yeah.
And then having to kind of refine those ideas.
Yes.
Bring it to something more manageable.
Yeah, just a little bit too ambitious.
Yeah, it's not even just manageable. It's just, like, pulling it back. You can actually focus so much more into certain details.
Yeah.
And
it's
bring
obviously
so much more.
diluted if you're going to be looking at so many different areas. Yeah.
And that's the biggest part of making a DA. I think a lot of people go really big.
Yep.
And then they lose all the small details that can be so interesting too.
Yeah. But I think we're on a good track now with
Yeah, I feel
I
really
hope.
happy with mine.
We'll
Especially
see,
with
yeah.
discussing. I think it opened like a lot of like there's more ideas flowing now in the head. I'm just like, oh, I didn't consider this before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true. And I think that's the point of this. So
Yeah.